things made out of wood. Now, it doesn't last as long typically as the other materials. Glass and ceramic will last forever in the world. Once they are made, they will never break down unless they're broken. Okay, wood though, you can get bugs, heat, cold, fire, all kinds of things. This is the oldest known piece of woodworking that we have, and this is from Egypt, Hedepheres. So this is about 5,000, almost 5,000 years old, 4,000 something years old. That's pretty miraculous. The reason, of course, as you know about Egypt, is it was preserved inside of a tomb. So if it had been out of doors or even in a building somewhere, and getting daily use, or even if it had been preserved in a museum, it would not have lasted that long. So this kind of unusual piece that we have here, but generally speaking, we don't have a lot of wood artifacts from antiquity. We have some, a couple 100-year-old type things, but that's about it. And some things are damaged. If you saw our piece, when we were talking about carving back in chapter 11, it's got a little bit of damage on it. So it's very hard for wood to last over the millennia. Hundreds of years, yes. Thousands, no. Fiber is a pliable thread-like strand. Now, there's a ton of fiber. When you look at a reed or something, and you guys maybe have goofed around with pine needles or palm fronds or something where when it's green and wet and you can really bend it and weave it around. Well, a lot of that has a huge history, and they don't know in the history of things being constructed by humans if baskets came first or if pottery came first. The reason they don't know that is because baskets don't last, right? They're organic material and they break down. So some people think pottery imitates baskets, some of the texture and some of the designs. Some people think that baskets imitate pottery. We don't really know the actual truth of this. Now, this is a Pomo basket, California, Native American, 1877, and it's got feathers in it. So it wouldn't have been something that was used on a daily basis with all this decoration, because all this stuff would have worn off. Plus, you don't want to decorate something that ornately that's just going to get manhandled and used roughly. So many, many baskets, and actually the Palm Springs Museum has a great collection of native California baskets. They're very strong. The Southwest in general has some beautiful basket making, some of the most beautiful in the world. And in terms of rug weaving, the Navajo, around this time frame, I think a little bit earlier, was the peak of weaving in the world that ever happened. It was the most fine, complex loom weaving. At least that's what I've come to know from maybe a Navajo person. So maybe that's not accurate, but that's what I understand. Okay, so here's a couple textiles that are loom woven. This is pottery, or sorry, this is basket making, so that it has more of a dimension to it, and it's got a warp and a weft the same as a loom weaving piece does. So this particular tunic in Peru, and this is one of my all-time favorite design motifs. I just think it's amazing. This is preserved much like Egyptian art is preserved. It's from a tomb originally, and the deserts on the shoreline, very much like our beaches, but more sand. It's got a bigger beach, and it's very, very dry. So people are buried on those beaches in Peru, and this stuff is preserved inside there. So the tomb culture preserved a lot of these beautiful pieces. This is a Persian rug, more typical of something that we've seen in more recent households. This is from 1539, but these types of rugs are still made. Wool and silk, really beautiful. I actually have one I'm looking at on my own living room floor. Of course, not this fancy. But they're really, these types of loom weaving, there's different types where you're seeing sort of a cross linear construction here. Rugs are a little bit different. So there's textile, clothing, there's felting. When you're felting, you take wool and you rub it to other pieces of wool for a long time, and you might even put it in the dryer. If you've ever put a sweater in the dryer, then you know what felting is. Okay, so that's when the wool becomes more dense and agitated, and it connects to itself. Okay, weaving parallel sets of two fibers. Ivory, jade, and lacquer, I'm going to go kind of quickly on this. So ivory, of course, came from elephants. Also, walrus was true. Very unfortunate because a lot of elephants have died in the 20th century due to this wish to have ivory. So arts, craft, and design. So it's segregated from the fine arts. This gets segregated in the Renaissance, okay? It's not a sort of a natural occurrence that everyone agrees on, and in Japan it is not agreed on. But in the Western culture, in the Renaissance, they've decided that painting, sculpture, and architecture were far more important than craft. Okay? Then the art and crafts movement happens. Now, this happens in response to the Industrial Revolution. Remember, I told you it was extremely important to know about the Industrial Revolution in terms of the art and what happens. People are tired of manufactured objects. Plastic hasn't even been invented yet when the arts and crafts movement happens. I'm going to skip over here to Gustav Stickley and talk about it here. But things are not handmade. All the wood is all the designs and the manufacture is all done assembly line style, like a car or other, like a microwave or anything like that. So the furniture was losing its sort of soul or its aesthetic appeal. So